Yo, what up guys? Coming at you with a different kind of video today. I actually got myself a web camera recently. So this is footage from Ozbot Meet 2, I think it's called. But I wanted to get one of these in order to be able to kind of go over some stuff that I've covered before and, kind of compile it into one video. So it's a little bit more comprehensive, a little bit more helpful in general. So, what I'm going to be talking about today is basically everything that I needed to clearance on my Gktech Superlock kit after I put the extended LCAs in. We're just going to go in and try to do this and see if this all works. I'll give you guys a little bit of a backstory. These fronts here are 18 by 9.5 plus 15. That's pretty much the most aggressive you'd want to go on the front of a 370 with the Superlock kit without over fenders or like a wide body. I'll just kind of replay the video and cover what makes sense now. But yeah, this was like in between my first and second drift day and stuff like that. So let me get a light down here. There we go. All right, so I got some light here. So I've been clearancing some stuff and things. I'll kind of get under there and show you guys what I've been doing. But so I've had to clearance a little bit of this sway bar. So the sway bar with this spec of wheel, you're gonna need to address the stock sway bar. What I had trimmed was this here, just a little bit, couple millimeter, and there's a little tab on this where this mounts up to the sway bar end link. You need to cut this corner off so it will clear this edge here. Just wanted to show you guys where that trim is actually happening. So this is your front sway bar. You're going to be trimming basically a straight line parallel with this edge, but basically going to be trimming that straight line about 3 to 4 mil away from that hole, and that should give you enough clearance to run a stock sway bar. I also pulled these fenders out a bit to be able to fit this spec wheel and tire setup up front, right about here. As you guys can see, she's pretty tight. That's without a spacer, with the 9.5 plus 15s on. That's your clearance right there. As well, I did have issues at a future event with the clearance to the tie rod. So realistically, the fix for this is to run a different spec wheel. You could run this spec wheel with maybe a 5 mil spacer. Maybe you'd be fine. But again, you're gonna need to pull your front fenders or put overs on the car. Another thing as well, that's kind of like a normal thing that you're gonna need to do, is when you put on your Superlock kit, I don't know if you guys can see here.
Rack spacers, I had to grind.
It's a very normal thing to do, but you're gonna need to grind or cut the threads on the inner tie rod, which I had no idea about when I brought my car into an alignment. Nate told me about it. Let me know I need to do that so it doesn't bottom out on the rack.
Down the inner tie rod threads.
That's the first thing you're gonna need to trim.
So that
here is the clearance with that 3 mil spacer. It actually opened up quite a lot, about that much, but it was enough for me to run the next event.
Yeah, man.
And at least the trailing wheel wasn't rubbing on the sway bar, but at the next event, the lead wheel was grinding into the inner tie rod. So that was something I had to address. There's a couple more things I had to clearance. On the Gktech knuckle here, we actually had to grind some material down. So this here is where your old tie rod would pick up. With the version they had sent me out, they've updated this since, so I don't know if you're gonna have to do this or not, but I had to grind these down a bit because it was actually limited. The steering angle was limited at the ride height I was at because I wanted a little to be a bit higher. So my car was a little bit too high to run this untrimmed. So we needed to be able to trim this down in order to make space for this collar to pass by.
Group, this tie rod end was binding on this right here. So had to clearance this a little bit with an angle grinder as well.
I had to clearance that sleeve and that nut right there. You can kind of see that rust spot. That's where it's like rubbing or contacting. So I did need to clearance that as well. I have not changed these outer sleeves since I actually put the kit in, believe it or not. So I think a lot of this clearancing is probably due to incorrect installation. I think there's more thread engagement at this tie rod than I think. I think I can push this out, and therefore you guys probably aren't going to need to actually do that much trimming if you install this correctly.
So this is the issue that I was having with the 18 by 9.5 plus 15s with the 3mm spacer on them.
All right, so after that last run, I got some new rubbing going on. It was happening at Lock City, but I'm gonna see.
So, as you can see, that's digging into the inner tie rod collar, not ideal. So I did end up putting some lock stops back into the car. They were set maxed out. That was basically my issue there. I ended up getting different wheels for the front. So these are actually, they're 8.5 plus 38 offset wheels. And I believe I'm running...
I have a 20mm and a 3mm spacer stacked on top of each other.
So it's a 20mm and a 3mm. Recently I put in a 5mm into that stack as well.
And that's giving me enough clearance. Before, we had 21mm of clearance at full droop with the other rims that we had on, with those ones.
So I was taking measurements to the tie rod and to the sway bar, trying to get like a similar measurement as I had before.
These lock stops, I replaced the bolts with grade like 10.9.
Yeah, so the bolts on the lock stops, you might need to replace those.
And I took there was a cotter pin stuck in between here, if you guys remember, to help space this out, and so it couldn't get crushed in any farther.
So I also, to set the lock stop at the event, I actually took a cotter pin, bent it into like a U shape, and stuck it behind this plate so that it wasn't like flat up against the bar. Because every time I tried to set the lock stop out and I went out to drive, it would just slam the lock stop back to max. So you kind of need to put something behind there. I don't know if they've updated that yet, but I feel like that would be an easy fix. Just really maybe drilling like a divot into that like LCA for like a set screw to be placed, and maybe you can actually move that plate around.
Now we are running the most amount of lock you can get on the kit, unless I take those lock stops out.
I have not taken them out since. I have thought about it. You don't really want to run a super aggressive spec up front. You're going to be running into clearance issues, and I myself personally am a big fan of running a front sway bar, so that's why I'm opting to run a smaller front wheel so I can, get all of the steering range possible. Now, there is a couple more things that do kind of contact. The other thing that contacts is, right now I have let's see if we can get a shot of it, but I have the LCA set up in their middle position. So there is actually 4 holes here. So there's one outer hole, a middle hole, one hole to the right of it, and then another hole where your sway bar end link goes through. Setting them out here is where your stock damper motion ratio is supposed to be, so that's kind of where I've set it. The other thing that is contacting, doing the wraparound here, is actually the brake caliper to the bottom of the coilover sleeve. So that is one thing that I've not done yet, and that's kind of like the next step, is actually trimming this point where it's contacting out of that sleeve. These are very strong. You do not need the full circumference of that. And I have base brakes. Keep that in mind as well. So that is one other thing you can do to clearance your trailing wheel, because what happens when your brake caliper hits the coilover, your brake pedal loses pressure and you kind of lose braking force. So you have to like pump the pedal and like really jam down on the pedal to get it to brake properly. So the fix for that would be clearancing this and or moving this coilover in on these motion ratio holes, these mounting holes. Moving that inward is going to change the damper ratio, I believe. That will affect how the car drives, and I'd probably need to run a different setting in my front coilovers to make it feel what it feels like now. That's one further step you can go, and that's about the only other step I think you would need to go.
Here you can actually see potentially where it may have hit already. So that is kind of our limiting factor right there.
So as you can see, it's actually hitting on the banjo bolt, so that's even worse. That's why I'm losing braking pressure. One other thing that I actually did clearance was the banjo bolt itself at a slight angle, but to a point where I can still fasten it and unfasten it and such. So that's really it. That's all you're going to need to clearance for this kit if you're running with offset rack spacers. And actually right here is a really good shot of the sway bar as well. This cut right here is done to let you run a stock sway bar. And I haven't had any issues with this. These are Moog sway bar end links, so that could change depending on how you have your sway bar end link set up. I imagine with an adjustable link, you might not even need to do the whole trimming of the sway bar here. And earlier with the bigger wheels, I had to clearance the sway bar as well there. As well, we had that old tie rod pickup point we had to clearance, and then the inner tie rod as well, so it doesn't contact your rack. That's basically everything that I have done to get this kit to run smoothly on my car. I do run a negative, I believe it is negative 4.7 degrees of camber, and I have around, I think it's around negative 5.7 degrees of caster. So that is my alignment settings, and my toe out is just a 16th in total, if anybody's curious. And the kit runs great, so that's right. So I think that's it. This might not be the only time I try to record this video, but we'll see. I don't know how frequent this kind of video is going to be, but if I can kind of compile things into one video a little bit easier, more summarized, overall more informative for you guys, I'll try and do it. And I guess, you know, if you guys got questions, like, please drop them down below in the comments. Need some more people commenting on these videos. Drop it a like, share it, whatever, if you think it's helpful. And I hope to catch you in the next one. So I hope you have a nice night, day, wherever you are. And yeah, peace out.